some of his water magic. After putting out the flame, they decided to lie down. This time, Jasmine sparks the conversation. She feels guilty for becoming her guardian, as she's different from the rest. She's unlike the people who are approachable and knowledgeable. She thinks it's wrong of her to assume responsibility without considering his feelings. Arthur is rather stunned to find this sensitive side from her. Jasmine releases a wind spell to remind him not to tease her. The boy goes against her opinion, believing that she made the best choice to volunteer. He's happy that she's not scared of correcting, which is exactly what he needs most right now. Hearing that, her face lights up with another smile. The boy recommends they head to sleep. Jasmine seems to be up for a while and shares a weird feeling. It's almost as if she isn't talking to a child when speaking to the boy. The boy doesn't respond, so she assumes that he's already slept. But then we catch Arthur's perspective, who did hear her words, but couldn't respond with the truth. Morning comes around with Arthur experiencing a nightmare of his life. He sees Sylvie looking like a damn alien and shoves her away. Turns out this creature wasn't Sylvie, but an ugly-ass beast. Jasmine woke up sooner than him and greeted the boy good morning. Arthur's peeved she didn't wake him sooner to help with the chores. Turns out Jasmine did her part, but he was out cold. Anyway, she thinks it's best for them to eat now. Arthur decides that it's a good idea to ask Sylvie to eat together. What's really funny is that she hunted the same ugly beast from earlier and secured food for herself. Since she's fine on her own, they share breakfast and get ready to go. Jasmine explains that she brought him to this place to fight against him. Arthur hadn't considered that. She wants to fight him to help mitigate the stance issues with his fighting style, almost as if his body isn't listening properly. She could see that in his fight against Caspian. Arthur knows she's right, and asks what they're going to be focusing on. Jasmine draws her blade and explains that she wants to test his physical prowess before jumping into missions. That's why she wants him to focus his mana only on his weapon. Arthur reaches for the sword, only for Jasmine to shockingly instruct him to use his real sword. The boy is stunned that she knew, but Jasmine found out judging by his personality and use of practical equipment. He grabs the stick and follows Jasmine's lead. Arriving at last, the boy unsheathes his blade, surprising her greatly. He gets into stance to take her on, so she responds the same. Both fighters are ready to fight, and it's been quite some time since Arthur fought without reinforcing mana. The fight begins with him being aggressive. Jasmine blocks his attack with her twin blades and responds critically to each attack. Arthur goes for a forward thrust, which is also conveniently dodged by her. This fight experience has confirmed his fears from his previous fight. He could barely keep up with Jasmine with her overwhelming flurry of attacks. Arthur gains his distance, only to find her advancing with her blade again. He realized his mistake with being obsessed with magic only. Arthur quickly found himself on the extreme defensive as a swordsman, and Jasmine was exploiting this side of him to an extreme extent. He faced much difficulty without relying on magic, to the point he was nearing exhaustion. It was as if the magic he had been using became a crutch to rely on. By the end, his exhausted state couldn't continue. Arthur conceded the match, leading to Jasmine's verdict. She values his techniques but finds his movements jarring and unnatural. She also praises his intuitive talent. At the same time, Arthur could tell she was holding back to an extreme extent, once again confirming her assessment of his skills. Jasmine believes that he's only become stronger with experience in his teen years. However, Arthur doesn't want to wait that long. His new training is to focus on his sword fighting skill without focusing on mana. Jasmine thinks he's going crazy if he thinks he'll survive dungeons without activating mana. The boy confidently declares that he only needs 2 years to overcome the gap. A time skip of 2 years follows after the boy's declaration. In one of the guild gatherings, talks of a famous masked swordsman are circling about. One guy confirms that the rumor is true as his friend managed to team up with him once. The swordsman travels with Jasmine. The only thing his acquaintance mentioned about the boy was him not being a mage. But no one is ready to believe those words. After all, many are under the impression that the masked swordsman is supposed to be an augmenter. Everyone has heard stories about the guy solo clearing dungeons all on his own. It's something even the B-class augmenters greatly struggle with. That's why no one is ready to believe that the kid is an ordinary swordsman without mana. Also, the fact that Jasmine is with him adds to the possibility that he was assisted greatly. They all undermine the masked swordsman's skill and believe that the rumors must be linked to Jasmine instead. The brute drunk musclehead is ready to take on the masked swordsman any day of the week. Still, it appears that Arthur's identity as Note has become a really big deal. Some stories talk about him being Jasmine's personal apprentice, but that possibility seems out of the question too. They recall the boy being placed in B-class out of the bat and even moved up to A-class recently. Heavy on the drinks, the dudes think he must be A-class after honing his skills. This NPC is regretting that he's nothing more than a C-class adventurer who couldn't promote himself for 3 years straight. He understands Termin the Musclehead's frustration, as he's also a B-class augmenter himself. The masked swordsman's very existence is a hard thing for many people to accept because of their own weaknesses. Interestingly, the door opens as one warrior steps forth. The same guy they were just talking about. It's the masked swordsman in the flesh, and he's come right on time. Turman tosses his drink and prepares his blade. He's happy to test out the midget who everyone has been obsessing over. Turman's outlash receives concerns from his friends, but he's too busy talking Arthur down. The boy merely ignores him and walks past as if he were nothing. This provokes the brute into taking a swing. Turman tries to go for a kill shot from his blind spot. The attack wraps up in his disappointment. He missed the boy. Either that or the masked swordsman dodged. He stares at Turman with a dark glare, pissing him off even more. The brute rages on after infusing his blade with wind magic. He thinks the outcome this time will be different, but Arthur simply dodges all of his swings like nothing. In one precise moment, Arthur gets so pissed that he slashes the man's fingers clean off of his hand. Turman wails in agony and fear, crying his eyeballs out. Then he sees a haunting face, an atmospheric pressure unlike any other. The overwhelming swordsman is done with this man's temper tantrum and takes his seat. The rest of them are intimidated by his mere presence. Arthur wants the waitress to fetch him a sack of rations. He takes what he came here for and goes back to Jasmine, who wonders what took him so long. Choosing not to divulge into the truth, he blames it on the waitress, but Jasmine can tell something went down with blood on his mask. Arthur lifts his mask and confirms that he didn't cause irreversible damage to his victim. The same day, Arthur decides to write a heartfelt letter to his parents, mentioning his forthcoming experience in the dungeon. He apologizes for his lack of visits and glosses over the past 2 years. His excitement over Lilia is uncontainable, and hopes for Vincent to have an easy hand on his daughter. He wants Lilia to train on her own for a while before heading to the academy. The boy finds it strange to think that she'll be his senior. He talks about becoming even stronger than last time, when he challenged his pops in an arm wrestling match. And recently, the boy broke through the light orange stage. Jasmine, on the other hand, is helping him lots with training and expertise on wind magic. At the same time, he is coaching her on techniques, so they're learning from each other. As promised, this is going to be his last trip before he starts his school life. He closes the letter with an endearing confession of love. After writing, Arthur expresses that the letter will be mailed soon. Jasmine thinks there's nothing to worry about now, because a letter is better than his family waiting outside a dangerous dungeon. Jasmine asks if the little Bond will be accompanying them today, but Arthur tells her that Sylvie has only been communicating telepathically. She's also grown smarter and talks in detail now. She doesn't want to engage with him until she's fully ready. Arthur doesn't get what she's implying by that either. The black-haired girl suspects that she wants to become stronger before they start school together. With that settled, she places emphasis on their current mission. They both hurry ahead and find themselves stuck with Lucas's annoying group. Yeah, that bratty kid who got on our boys' nerves last time. The beefy guy with a mustache seems to be the leader of the group and wants to introduce them to his party. He's also glad to meet the masked swordsman in all his glory. This guy is Reginald Bastion, an A-class warrior. He mentions Lucas's specialties, but they don't need an introduction on that since they're already aware. There's also Creole, a water specialist augmenter acting as their line of defense. Then there's another in their group, Elijah, who is currently recruited as an A-class warrior with a specialization in Earth. Oliver the Conjurer also makes his presence known as an A-class mage. He specializes in healing magic, but judging from his words, he sounds arrogant. Then there's Samantha Tempest, a pretty girl who is also an A-class conjurer specializing in water. Like the others, she's heard plenty of rumors regarding the masked swordsman and hopes to be in his care. Brauld Landon is the Prince Charming of the group, who has recently transcended to the double A class. He's the guy who's going to lead them in the dungeon raid today. Brauld offers both Jasmine and her friend to introduce themselves. She mentions her rank as a double A class augmenter specializing in wind magic. Now they've got 2 reliable warriors among them. Lastly, there's our boy note, an A ranker specializing in fire attributes. Hearing this, Samantha is astonished to learn that he's capable of using an elemental affinity. The boy reveals that he's been holding back on using his magic for a while for a personal reason. Brauld seems intrigued by him and wonders if the 2 of them don't have dimensional rings to take care of the luggage. Both of them shake in disapproval, so Brauld turns to Lucas for help, who rejects immediately. Oliver is already full in his inventory carrying Samantha's stuff. But Elijah's storage seems free, so he's happy to assist. Using his dimensional ring, he absorbs their luggage. Arthur is rather surprised to see Elijah in possession of this ring. It's a kind of ancient technology built by the same mages who made the floating city of Cyrus. As expected, they cost a lot of money, and I'm talking thousands to get even one. Arthur expresses his gratitude with a smile, which causes Glasses Boy to get flushed. With their preparations finally ready, the group collectively heads inside the dungeon's entrance. The party's inside the drenched dungeon. Their leader, Brauld, instructs the group to remain cautious since they've finally reached the first level. Lucas is surprised that they've yet to discover a monster in a supposedly monstrous dungeon. They've yet to find anything in this silent cavern. That is until one tiny rock catches the group's attention. Brawl's attention draws towards the ceiling as he is horrified to see the terrifying creatures eyeing them from above. These are the vicious bat runners, and these creepy bastards are not one to leave you alone until you're dead. Jasmine quickly saves Oliver's life while their tank sets up his shield to block off the creepy crawlies. In the face of this sudden and unexpected attack, their leader enforces a team formation to counter the monsters. The healer among them casts his healing spell to make sure no one gets injured for long. The Batrunners are unsuccessful in their attempts to take them all down, as even Elijah displays his talents with earth spears. Brawl is cutting the sons of bitches down when he realizes there's no point wasting their energy here. On the other hand, Lucas, being defiant as always, casts an enormous fire cyclone that incinerates these uglies in one single attack. But the leader is extremely displeased with his personal decision on the matter, especially since they are needed to conserve their mana for now. He wonders if the kid even knows the kind of dungeon he stepped into. Lucas is narrow-minded and reasons that he wanted to prevent everyone else from wasting their mana. The leader leaves him alone and recommends they hurry up ahead unless they want Batman's cousins here to get back up again. Arthur notes that this dungeon is infamously known for mysterious undead and immortal creatures. This made it impossible to recover mana cores by other adventurers. It was just an endless amount of fighting to no avail. There's a solid reason why the first raiders of the dungeon decided to call this hellhole the Dire Tombs. Traversing up ahead in the dark dungeon, Brawl recalls the location he marked last time he came here. This assures Arthur of the reason they stepped into the dungeon in the first place. The leader wants Elijah to cast some handholds for them to use as a climbing mechanism. The rest of the group decides to assist each other with the use of the handholds, and eventually all of them are up at the top. The leader recalls how he made it to the second floor before deciding to opt out. This means whatever is up ahead is unknown territory to all of them. At the same time, Brawl is optimistic that the artifact responsible for casting the infinite reanimation of the Batrunners is also hiding somewhere around here. The tank of their group is willingly to do whatever it takes for his share of the prize money. Brawl is happy to compensate Creole well as long as they finish things up. Turning his attention back to the floor, Brawl thinks it's about time they step inside. The group traverses their way inside until eventually, Arthur dashes in to save Samantha from a projectile only he could see. The girl doesn't even get what happened, and some of them are frustrated that their leader didn't highlight the mention of traps around here. This is actually a shocking occurrence since not even Brawl remembers facing traps the last time he was here. The healer checks on Samantha's condition, but she thinks she's okay, and turns her attention to the masked swordsman, who is inspecting the projectile shot at them. Arthur sharply judges that this wasn't a trap, but rather the work of a mana beast. This shocks the rest of the group and alarms them for what's to come. Brawl insists that all of them stay sharp from here on out, since things will only get even more unpredictable. The group explores the deeper dungeon until at last, they've arrived near a red smoky domain. Once more, things are not as they seem as Brawl recalls something different this time. It's not the steam emanating from the cave, but rather something else. Even Arthur picks up on the same sensation. It's not the heat they're feeling, it's the powerful pressure cruising past them. Entering the volcanic room, they come across a bunch of geysers layered all over and across. In suddenness, the entire group experiences sudden collapse and questions what's happening. Even Brawl is perplexed as to why the ground is shaking. All their questions are answered when a giant fucking sandworm straight out of Dune emerges from the ground. The mother of all creepies scares the healer shitless, and Brawl immediately calls for their tank to come forth. This dude Creole may be a fat ass, but he can jump pretty high and raise a wave of water sphere to shield the group. Now the sandworm is blocked out momentarily, allowing them enough time to form a counterattack. Brawl doesn't recall encountering a giant mana beast like this, while Creole is dumbfounded how a new kind of monster species suddenly spawned inside this dungeon. Their discussion matters very little to the creature who's about to launch its first wrathful attack, but astonishing everyone's expectations, it chooses not to attack and traverses underground instead. This makes it seem like the creature has stopped targeting them. The healer arrogantly recommends they check on the artifact instead of worrying about the worm. He stupidly goes up ahead while defying the leader's orders. Even Samantha thinks he's being an idiot, but this guy has balls of titanium for a healer and walks away from the team anyway. Brawl calls out his name repeatedly, but this guy just doesn't listen. Meanwhile, Arthur senses something from underground and finds himself terrified to realize what's happening. He alerts Lucas to cast an instant heatwave barrier and reaches for Brawl next, grabbing his coat. Lucas snaps and has no choice but to cast the barrier in confusion. The attack is directed near Oliver, and right when Arthur is about to suggest him to cast a barrier for himself, this guy is incinerated in a dam explosion, wiping him out. In response to the tense situation, Samantha casts her own water barrier. When the scene settles, Brawl's face turns to horror. The rest of the group can't even bear to look at what they see before them. Their healer's body has been roasted to the bone, leaving pieces of his flesh scattered on the ground. May he roast in peace. Arthur decides to retrieve the mana crystal from his remains and tosses it to Samantha, requesting her to replace the gem with the one in her wand. She follows his instructions as Arthur emphasizes the requirement of an immediate exit. Even the leader can't turn down the boy's suggestion, as they've got no way to survive another eruption from one of these geysers. The group moves fast on its feet, racing towards the exit. But that's right where their friendly mother of all uglies pops out from. Brauld once more directs their tank to cast a water barrier, but this time, the worm is extremely aggressive and on the offensive. Next up is Elijah and Samantha's turn to shine as they cast a stun attack to delay the creature as much as they possibly can. Elijah casts his stone serpent's grasp to restrain the monster, but it can only do so much. Even the leader is surprised that both their spells were ineffective. Then he directs both Jasmine and Reginald to cast a combined attack with him. Brauld's body is enforced by the flames, and he directs Jasmine to distract the creature, allowing their final assailant to deal the actual blow between the monster's eyes. If this plan of attack fails, then Lucas and Arthur will jump in to ramp up the offense. Brauld is the first to strike the creature with his fiery slashes. Then up next is Jasmine's windcutter slashes, both of them injuring the worm a bit. The final and main attacker is Reginald, who hammers down on his target, busting the monster's head. The scene leaves Lucas out of the picture, who is frozen solid in place and refuses to act in fear. That's because none of the fire spells are proving effective against this monster so far. Arthur thinks that he has to ramp up the intensity of his flames to an extreme amount to challenge the worm's durability. He coats his weapon in an orange hue and leaps away to land the first critical hit on the monster, severing some of its teeth. He alerts Jasmine to follow through with her side of the attack, and she does the same by rupturing the other side of the monster's face. The worm is now wailing in agony as blood pours out of its crevices. The leader alerts Lucas to act immediately, but before he's able to jump in for the attack, the worm finds itself retreating. They're safe for the time being, and their leader is grateful of the group's performance. Jasmine emphasizes them to hurry, while Lucas is already acting boastful that the worm was scared away easily. Bro is easily humbled as the ground shakes uncontrollably, this time even worse than last time. Arthur realizes that the worm's goal was never to kill them directly, but to wait for another eruption that would wipe them all out. The entire team sets up its defensive barriers to avoid the same fate that happened to Oliver. Jasmine could have saved Arthur, but then Lucas would be undefended. Our boy risks his life just to save his ass and casts an incredible wall of flame, becoming his savior. The eruption ends, but Lucas's temper tantrum doesn't. He swipes Arthur away, which really makes me want to root for Arthur chucking his ass in a volcano. I mean, come on. Arthur turns his attention to their injured leader, who did his best to protect their teammate, but lost his limb in the process. Samantha can't even bear to look at the horrific sight. The man wails in unrelenting agony, screaming his lungs out as his companions hold him together to seal off the wound. Arthur's doing his best with his sword, while Brauld is experiencing so much pain that he's crying his eyeballs out. After Arthur was done, Samantha took over to heal the man. This was a tedious job for the masked swordsman. Creole, being a hardy fellow, decided to share some of his sandwiches with the boy in an effort to cheer him up. He sat next to the kid talking about his emergency sandwiches whenever he felt sad. The boy is grateful for his consideration. Using his instructions, Arthur roasts the inside of the sandwich, making it smell steamy and delicious, so much so that even Creole wants some of it. They both enjoy the delicious sandwiches that Creole's fiancée made. The boy thinks he's one hell of a lucky man to have scored such a chef of a wife. He wants Creole to send his regards, but from his hesitant reaction, we can assume the worst for his wife. Aside from these guys, the group is in shambles because Lucas is fucking around pointing fingers at their leader. He's pissed that their leader is effectively useless now, and their main healer is also no more. A seriously annoyed Brauld roars at the arrogant child who got saved by Arthur at the last second. The leader wanted to save a teammate, that being Samantha, which is why he sacrificed his limb for the job. Brauld roars at Lucas for failing to set up a proper defense barrier in time. But the masked swordsman has had enough of their crap and confronts Lucas as the main issue. Arthur shuts his bullshit down by stating that he doesn't give a flying fuck if he's the best augmenter or conjurer there is. All he thinks of him right now is that the spoiled brat is nothing more than a liability to the team. Hearing this, Lucas frustratingly leaves while Reginald recommends their team leader to get some rest in the meantime. With Lucas gone, the boy confronts their leader, requesting him to make an immediate decision before they advance deeper into the dungeon. Reginald has suffered burns because of the eruption, but his injuries aren't deep. The rest of the team is okay, but the only person in jeopardy is the team leader himself. Arthur wants him to decide here and now if he's going to continue onwards or not. Grinding his teeth, the team leader shows eyes of determination, claiming that he's ready to take on the final dungeon raid of his life all the way. Samantha offers